Hello there, welcome into the show. Day 7 of the World Cup, a week nearly into the tournament. This is where that stamina really starts to
the
get
players are up.
Yeah, well, how are you holding up? Are you doing
Just
okay?
about. Yeah,
You're fresh.
We're still alive.
You're fresh.
I feel I've come off the bench.
A couple of days off, yeah.
Alejandro Moreno, Stuart Robson, Craig Burley here. I'm Adrian Healy. 3 games today that all looked a little lopsided on paper. The results, though, were anything but. Let's start with Spain beating Iran by a 1-0. That masterful finish from Diego Costa, which you admire so much. Yeah. The knee bash. What was your assessment of the Spanish performance?
So underwhelming and frustrating in terms of you have the possession of the ball, you start moving the ball around, but you're unable to create opportunities. But it's difficult to do against a team in Iran that physically and literally had 11 players not only behind the ball, but essentially parked right inside their 18-yard box. So it makes it very difficult to find spaces. And Spain doesn't really have an alternative plan. It's not in their makeup to start just dumping balls into the box and trying to get some direct play with Diego Costa and maybe a second striker coming in behind. It just doesn't happen for them. It's not what they want to do. And so then you take the points, you take the result. It's frustrating in the way that they played, but I do think that there were a couple of individual performances that you can highlight. I thought Diego Costa gives you the hold-up play, and I thought Isco was very good. Outside of that, Spain will be concerned about sometimes defending. They have their issues. You take the 3 points and move on.
Nothing the Spanish can't have been expecting today, Craig.
Look, the team talk would have been exactly that. And the only way when a team plays like Iran, and listen, it's the only way they could get a result or try and get a result, is to get an early goal. If you somehow get an early goal in the first 10 or 15 minutes, it's the only way you get them to open up. That didn't happen, and it became very, very frustrating. So I wouldn't judge the Spanish on what we saw in this game, because when you saw how deep the Iran striker was, never mind the defence, then it's damn hard. Even when you've got David Silva, even when you've got Isco, who was excellent, even when you've got Iniesta and all these players who are some of the best prodders and passers in the world, it is still difficult.
When a team is determined and well organised, no matter who they are,
you have to find another way. Yeah. And Ali was talking about it. Spain have to find another way. When you get the ball on the corner of the box, sometimes you do have to lift it into the box to get Diego Costa between a fullback and a centre-half, because if that ball's played right, you've still got the opportunity to get between those two players and get the header in. Or the knockdown, players getting in on the knockdown. In the first half, I don't think Spain actually passed it into the box. They tried to pass it round the front of the box. They tried to sort of play into the front players. They were going back out again. I'm not sure they had a shot that wasn't blocked in the first half on target. So that was their problem. And in the second half, the worry for me was when Iran wanted to come out and play, they did create 2 or 3 chances, even though they didn't come out that often.
What's your main cause for concern looking at Spain now, 2 games into the tournament, under Fernando Hierro?
I'm not too concerned about Spain, to be quite honest, because I don't think every team that they're going to play as they advance in the competition are going to set themselves up like Iran did today. As you get further and further into the tournament, there's going to be teams that, yes, will be organized defensively, but will look to counter and actually open up. Iran never looked to do that, not until at least they got scored on. And so I'm concerned simply because if you're a Spanish national team player, that a light doesn't go off and tells you, you know what, we need to find a different way to win this game. It can't just be the passing around. We have to be vertical at times. We have to be direct at times. And that's one of the things that Lopetegui had brought to this team. It's like, we're going to be direct at times. We're going to skip lines of defending and see if we can win a knockdown on the other side. That wasn't happening today, and that's something that Spain has to improve upon.
I know you picked them to win, and then perhaps with the managerial team.
My worry was when you looked at those midfield players, Iniesta, Busquets, Isco, who was playing as the third midfield player, was playing further forward against the better teams. And Iran did it on 2 or 3 occasions in the second half. They can be counter-attacked. We saw Portugal counter-attack them at pace, and then the 2 centre-halves might be exposed. They're brilliant centre-halves, we know that. But if they come in at numbers, they might have a problem. Against the better teams, that would be.
Diego Costa, Craig, with 3 goals from 3 shots, getting it done at the moment.
He'll take 4 from 4 shots. I mean, he like Spain struggled in Brazil, off to a flying start. Wasn't much space for him, but his physical presence drags people in. He looks as if he's got his mind on the game. We haven't seen too much of the Diego Costa.
Playing with discipline.
We haven't seen too much of the niggles, and that's only going to be a good thing for Spain going forward.
Well, the man who does have 1 goal more than Diego Costa, of course, is Cristiano Ronaldo, who added to his tally with his 4th goal of the World Cup, the winner against Morocco. It gave him the most international goals ever by a European player at international level, edging out Puskás by a goal. Still got some way to catch up to the 109, which is the leading figure of all time. But a man who was there to see him notch his 85th goal was Gab Marcotti. That fourth-minute strike proving to be decisive for Portugal against Morocco. Gab, what was your assessment of their display?
You know what, Adrian? I'll give you their manager, Fernando Santos's assessment, who came out afterwards and said it was an unfair result. He was deeply disappointed with the way his team played, and obviously he had to be very grateful to Cristiano Ronaldo because their goal sent them on their way. But after that, they really suffered against Morocco's high press. They say they want to play a possession game. They were entirely unable to do it. They couldn't take the sting out of the press, other than one chance for Cristiano in early in the second half. They created very little. And by and large, he said, you know, if we want to go further in this tournament, we need to improve, and we need to do it in double quick time. And I think you can only take your hat off, frankly, to Morocco for the way they approached the game, because they really took it to Portugal.
Portugal, Craig, didn't look great. I think that's fair to say, but they found a way to get a result.
I don't remember Fernando Santos coming out after the 1-0 win in the European Championship final, where they didn't play particularly well and were unexpected winners of the game, really, as France were the favourites, and saying, well, I didn't enjoy that and we need to improve, because generally the Spain game apart in the first game, which was really open, that's not normally what we see from Portugal. And you know, I'm not surprised this game went the way it went, because that's the way Portugal have dug out results. With that little sprinkle of stardust, of course they've got Ronaldo, got Bernardo Silva as well, but there's one guy in particular who, when they soak up pressure, just takes it off them at the other end.
I think we spent most of the Euro saying, though, didn't we, about Portugal? They didn't look particularly good. They found ways to win, and they won the tournament.
But when you look at their midfield, there's certain players that I wouldn't say are great defensive players. Bernardo Silva out on the right-hand side, João Martinho, João Mario was playing out on the left-hand side. The player that really played well in the game, William Carvalho, he was the one that got in behind the fullbacks. He defended well in certain areas of the field. He got in between his centre-backs and defended balls there. He was the key player for them today. I thought he had an outstanding game against a team that totally outplayed them at times. Amrabat down that right-hand side did really well. Ziyech down the left-hand side caused them problems. So that was a tough game for Portugal.
Listen, Portugal have played the two strongest teams in the competition. Because Morocco, you know, they've got no points and they're out, but they're better than Iran. So they played the two strongest team. They've got 4 points and they can get better.
What I would suggest is the difference between Morocco and Portugal is one guy and one guy only. That's Cristiano Ronaldo. You put him with Morocco and Morocco wins this game simply because of the service that was coming into the box from Morocco, the opportunities that they were creating. They don't have Cristiano to finish those chances, while Portugal has Cristiano who can bail them out. So regardless of who they are and what their identity is, Portugal recognizes that, you know what, this is how we're going to win games. And we have a guy on the other side that can win games for us.
Things looking pretty good indeed for Portugal. You look at the Group B standing. Spain and Portugal 4 points apiece. Of course, Portugal finish up against Iran. Spain play Morocco, those two games on Monday. Meanwhile, in Group A, well, it's been decided already, isn't it, who's going through? We already knew about Russia. We already knew Egypt were out. Uruguay joining them. Saudi Arabia going home after Uruguay's narrow 1-0 win against Saudi Arabia. And again, it was one of the main men, Luis Suarez this time, who came through. But this is not a game that will live on long in the memory, Ali.
No, and let me tell you how much Uruguay cares that it lives in the memory. They don't.
Zero?
This is how they win. And I don't know what the expectation is for Uruguay and what people really want this team to look like. But this is who they are. They grind out results, and whether it's Saudi Arabia or somebody else, this is the way they play. They're going to be organized. They're going to have Godin and Jimenez in the back. In the midfield, they have some changes, some fluctuations. Some players come in and out. And then you have Cavani, and then you have Luis Suarez. And then they just say, you know what? You guys up there, figure it out for us. We'll be solid back here. We'll win 1-0. Move on to the next game. And when you think about Uruguay taking on Russia in that last game of the group stage, I'm still picking Uruguay because I trust that defensive side is going to do well, is going to keep it at 0, and they have more than enough talent in the attacking half.
At one point in the second half, sorry, Robbo, as Cavani went down the left-hand side, cuts back inside. He finally got an overlap from the left back, and the only ball he had into the box was to the right fullback, who he picked out fantastically well, and he actually should have scored with a header. But there was nobody from midfield came and joined in. And that's kind of what Uruguay are all about, particularly when they get in front. They're very solid. Betancourt and Vicini will just look to sit in there and say, we're not going to take too many chances. We know we've got a bit of quality up front. We know we've got good centre-halves, particularly in Diego Godin. And so we're going to let the lads there get on with it.
We talked about Sweden being very much a basic 4-4-2. That's exactly what Uruguay are. And when they had decent possession in midfield, there was no real movement. They weren't creating overloads anywhere. The only person that made sort of runs out of his position was Rodriguez, who kept on making little diagonal runs, trying to get in behind the two forwards, and it left Cáceres to try and break forward down the left-hand side. Everything else was just in straight lines. There wasn't enough balls played into the front players to have that link-up play that we're talking about.
Well, the way Group B and Group A are shaping out, Gab, we could well look at a Uruguay-Portugal first knockout round encounter. Well, what would you make of that if it happened?
Well, obviously that'd be something, right? Ronaldo against Suarez. I think, look, from Portugal's perspective, and I go back to this, they have a lot of things to figure out. I mean, in some ways, they're almost sort of the antithesis of Uruguay, and not in the fact that they can be tough and defensive, but in the fact that he looks at this, Fernando Santos, and he changes formations during the game. He moves Cristiano around to the wing. He puts Guedes near him, then he puts Guedes out back wide. He tries to gain an edge tactically, I think, in a way, and we just heard there from Ali, in a way that perhaps Uruguay don't. Uruguay much more laid back, much more saying we'll get something on a set piece, and if not, we'll let the two big boys up front handle it. And it's a formula that certainly worked for them. I think, though, against Portugal, they might run into some trouble.
We are 20 games into the World Cup. We've yet to have a 0-0 draw. Can you believe that? First time since 1954. Check out our podcast on iTunes. Neymar back in training today for Brazil. I know you all had some sleepless nights after he limped out of training yesterday, but there he was today, looking right as rain, Ali.
He's doing just fine. Hey, everybody's happy. How's he going to perform?
Obviously, a quick recovery. There was a degree of scepticism here in the studio about the validity of that injury.
The system, the personnel can change slightly. The players that didn't play quite as well, so I wouldn't be worried by that. England have got their system. The personnel can change slightly, and with Rashford up front, who came on and did okay, and Sterling playing slightly deeper in the hole behind them, that would suit England quite well.
He might not have had his best game, but then again, when the best part of his game is timing runs into the box, and when there's a lack of space because a team, as in Tunisia did, sit deep, it kind of, and by the way, Panama will do the same, it kind of thwarts what he does. That being said, I think as the competition gets deeper, if England stay in it, and there's no guarantee with recent history, they need to get him playing his best, because making those driving runs from midfield when the play's gone down the left and right is what he does really, really well.
We were talking about, with Spain, finding another way. When a team is really defensive, they're holding their own box, that little diagonal ball, how many times have we seen Dele Alli make that run between a full-back and a centre-half to get on the end of it's usually Ericsson that's playing the ball for Tottenham, but I'm sure there's an England player that can do it, and that can break down tight. Maybe not. Yeah, but that ball is the one that can kill teams that really want to sit deep.
That being said, I wouldn't be going out running with the England manager, because I believe he's got
he's out of action.
I hope that's not a sign of things to come.
Dislocated shoulder for Gareth Southgate, but for Dele Alli, a game against Panama could be a game that imbues him with a degree of confidence. Panama just a little shaky defensively.
Well, not if you have a thigh strain. This guy's just talked about, and the late runs and those runs that he makes appear in front of the midfield and positions and pockets of space where now he runs into the box. In order to do that, you have to explode. When you explode, that's when things like thigh strains come about. And so, if you're not right, if you're not fit, I understand the decision to keep him out.
Now then, Thursday's games will feature Group C and Group D. The two games in Group C, Denmark, Australia, kicking things off, France and Peru. And then Argentina will be waiting in the wings, the late game against Croatia. Just a reminder of how they stand. Croatia beating Nigeria by 2-0. Argentina held by Iceland. And, of course, all sorts of adverse reactions from the Argentine media, and some Argentine legends like Maradona weighing in as well, calling that draw against Iceland a disgrace. Gab Marcotti with us again in Moscow. Gab, what's your sense of the dynamic surrounding Argentina at the moment?
I mean, look, right now there's a tremendous amount of pressure, not just, well, I'd say not so much on Lionel Messi because, you know, people miss penalties, even he misses penalties, and Maradona, of course, almost seemed to absolve him, saying, at one point I missed 5 straight penalties, and of course I am Diego Maradona, and this guy's only Lionel Messi. But where there's a ton of pressure is on Jorge Sampaoli, because in Argentina everybody seems to have a different idea of how the pieces ought to fit together. There's some people who are being particularly critical about him sticking with some of the veterans, Di Maria, of course, that central midfield partnership of Biglia and Mascherano. I don't know. My take is there obviously are serious flaws. They could probably do with breaking up that Biglia, Mascherano sort of pachyderm paste a central midfield. But let's not forget, they could have scored a whole bunch of goals against Iceland. They could have conceded some too, but I think they would have approached this game in a much different vein if they'd been able to do that.
11 shots from Lionel Messi without scoring, the most by any single player since 1970. This is going to be a very different sort of test, though, isn't it?
Absolutely, because Croatia have got some superstars, to be quite frank. I mean, they can leave Kovacic from Real Madrid on the bench, they can leave Brozovic, who plays at Inter Milan, on the bench, and there's a string of others. They've got a good squad. They've got full-backs that like to get forward. Okay, maybe Lovren and Vida at the back can be got at if there's no protection there. But everything goes through Modric and Rakitic, particularly Luka Modric. If Mascherano and Biglia don't get to him, or if it's Banega, whoever plays, if they don't get to Modric, he makes them tick. They get it wide, they get it in the box. I know they've got Mario Mandzukic up front. This is a damn good Croatian side. If they got a bit of stick for drawing against Iceland, if they lose to Croatia, they're going to get absolutely hammered, and they're going to be in big trouble.
We heard Gab talk about it. The 2 midfield players against Iceland weren't creative enough. Yeah, they'll keep the ball, they'll pass it square, they'll pass it sideways. And if Croatia are going to have lots of the ball, when you get it, it means the front players for Argentina, when they do have the chance to break forward, have to do more than they did in the last game. Yes, we saw Messi play little 1-2s and try and get it into the front. We saw the goal from Aguero. But the 2 wide players, Meza out on the right-hand side, he made a couple of little diagonal runs, but didn't do enough. And Di Maria, who I think you called the dumbest player that you'd seen. One of the dumbest players you'd seen. Yes. He didn't do enough out on the left-hand side. So those 2 players, I think, if they play, have to do much better to help out Messi and Aguero.
Might this be an opponent that actually suits Argentina a little better than an Iceland?
Maybe so, but this is also a team that is more talented than Iceland. And as limited in terms of talent as Iceland is, they created problems in the counter-attack, and not by adding 6 and 7 players into the attack. No, 2 and 3 players were in the attack for Iceland, and then all of a sudden that back line of Argentina was everywhere. I just look at a team in Argentina that has no real balance to it. And so if the matchup is Modric and Rakitic against Mascherano and Biglia, you have to love Croatia. However, they don't have Lionel Messi, and that seems to be the game plan now. It's just give it to Messi and hope that something happens. It's okay to give it to Messi and hope that something happens if the guys in front of him are making movements, are actually running in behind, are showing for the ball. If they're being dangerous, that makes Messi more dangerous as well, because then people have to pay attention to Aguero, to Di Maria, to Meza, to Pavón, to whoever is at that place, to Enzo Perez. If they create, that allows Messi to create as well and makes him more dangerous. Messi has to be excellent. The attacking half has to be excellent, and the other guys in the back have to hang on.
Adrian, I know Argentina's the story here, and I know they get stick. Well, Argentina-Croatia is the big game, and the pressure goes with them, whoever they play. But this result against Iceland, and they get hammered for it. Which Iceland, what was it? They got to the quarterfinals of the European Championships. Oh, and by the way, on the back of that, won their group
over Croatia.
In qualifying over Croatia, who went into the playoffs and had to beat Greece. This is a small country who are just doing things right. From grassroots right up to the top. They don't have star players, but they damn well know what they're doing.
They do have a star player. Sigurdsson is for Iceland. Sigurdsson, when he plays for Iceland, he's a magnificent player. But Croatia have got more. We talked about the midfield players. Perisic is another player that could overload that midfield area coming in from a wide position, and that's where Argentina's going to problems, in that central midfield.
And that's all right, because Willy Caballero, he can sort out the problems as well. No, he cannot.
Predictions, I know you love them. Argentina need this, don't they? Perhaps more than Croatia do. Is that going to affect what we see tomorrow?
It's going to be back and forth. There's going to be a whole lot of stuff going on in both boxes. I do believe that Argentina somehow wins it 2-1.
I've gone for a 1-1 draw.
Really?
It's me tight. I think, going to 1-1 draw.
Which would leave Argentina still very much in the mix.
Well,
Nigeria to come, wouldn't it? But
well, I mean, I'm going to go for a draw. I mean, it's going to be tight, but what is that going to leave them on 2 points? Croatia on 4 if that happens, and then of course if Iceland beat Nigeria, well, if one of the other teams wins,
Right.
it leaves them in a precarious
very
position.
precarious, but still alive. Group C, of course, is where 2 games will occur tomorrow. France looking to push on after edging past Australia. They will play Peru. The Socceroos trying to come back to take on Denmark. Let's start with France.
Now there is a man under
And
pressure.
Peru.
Yeah, Didier Deschamps.
Off.
After their display against Australia, yeah?
Yeah, and it's not just that. I mean, leading into the way they played in the friendlies, they drew with the US. Okay, it was a friendly. The squad selection, who's he going to play up front? The talent they've got, was Pogba going to start, wasn't he? They weren't great against Australia. Peru are going to be a bigger threat. He is under severe pressure.
He's got to get the tactical side of it right. I think Giroud will probably play. Dembele will probably come out the side. Whether he plays with 2 up front and Griezmann just in behind, I think that's what he'll go with. Then he's got the pace of Mbappe, he's got the heading ability of Giroud, he's got the quality of Griezmann behind. That's the way I would go.
Yeah, the problem for France is that Peru is a more dynamic team than Australia is. And so you have in Paulo Guerrero focal point of the attack, then you have the guys underneath, Cueva, Carrillo, guys that know what to do with the ball. Farfan will get into the box as well. If France doesn't take care of the ball and allow Peru to actually get possession of the ball and then find Paulo Guerrero and play off of him, Peru is good enough to create problems for France. So much so, then maybe Peru may just give
Peru
us a
were one of
surprise.
the most dynamic teams of the tournament so far, the way they played.
Just briefly, in 20 seconds or so, Denmark, Australia, any way back for the Socceroos,
Well,
you think?
you can dig in and get a result, but personally I think Denmark will just get the job done.
Denmark.
Denmark to win the game, I think. Unfortunate for the Socceroos, but Denmark.
Too little in terms of talent in the attack for Australia. Denmark 1-0.
We will be back.